Whoever she was must have scared the living daylights out of her.
The Living Daylights was the first of two Bond films with Timothy Dalton. It's pretty high up there, isn't it? On, when you have Bond fan rankings, both of his films are. But I think maybe because this is sort of seen as a return to the classier Fleming Cold War Bonds after A View to a Kill. I know we had Octopussy, but that's slightly different. Uh, don't worry, we love them all. But this was, I think it was seen as a bit of a shot in the arm at the time, maybe, that you do have to have changes in the series every so often. Roger had himself said he was a bit too old, and even though we love A View to a Kill, he would have been probably 60, wouldn't he, nearly, by the time this came out. So it was inevitable that somebody had to take over. Tim was that man, as we know, and he gave us one of the best Bond films and the most enduring Bond films. So yes, go on, Glenn. Just take us back to that moment when you were at the cinema and just tell us exactly what your experience was with it.
I remember just walking up the stairs inside the foyer, going probably to screen two because that was upstairs, and seeing this big billboard sign, these cardboard cutouts. And it was this massive it was the poster, but as a cardboard stand with James Bond. So, I was kind of familiar with the gun barrel logo. So I knew it was James Bond and it said, but I thought, wait a minute, I'm 10 years old. So obviously my mind is a bit, and it's like, that's a different James Bond. But then I did have that back in 1983 because with Never Say Never Again and Octopussy, there was two James Bonds, and that really blew my mind. I was completely confused. I mean, I was age 6 then, but I kind of had that feeling again when I was age 10. And I was just struck by how cool the poster was. It was just amazing. And then immediately when it came out, I got my parents, actually my dad, and yeah, and I remember it wasn't the very first screening I saw wasn't in Tunbridge Wells. It was because my aunt lived near Sevenoaks, and it was actually at the old picture house in Sevenoaks. And I remember it was a very rainy day, and my dad drove me there, and we went and saw it together, me and my dad. And yeah, that was it. I was just like, wow, this is an amazing film. And then I just kept going back again during the summer of 1987, age 10. I must have seen it at least 4 or 5 times. To the point that I actually went, I think my parents are sick and tired of going with me all the time, that eventually they're like, you know what, you're going on your own. Going back and even think about it, 40 odd years ago, age 10, going into the cinema on their own, it's quite a big deal.
Yeah. But what a film to do that with.
Yeah.
Amazing, Glenn.
And I was never bored, watching
No,
it.
no.
No, I absolutely enjoyed it. Even though, as we said earlier, it was a complicated story, especially the first half, because we know it was two stories pretty much, joined together. Now looking at it, it's kind of obvious it is. But the first half is very complicated with the defecting of the KGB agent and all that. And you just, as a 10-year-old, I was like, what's going on? But I just still loved it. That's the thing. I just loved it. And obviously the second half in Afghanistan, it's just amazing for a 10-year-old, so much action, excitement. Yeah.
I'll come back to Carrie now because just in your book, you point out so many different things that were going on at the time of release. And, one of them, of course, was the AIDS crisis. And
Yeah,
there was that decision, wasn't there, to just tone down the womanizing a little bit.
there was, and but that just as a lot of people know, but Dalton had almost no time to
Yeah.
get ready for Living Daylights. So it's interesting. It kind of wasn't written for him. It wasn't really written for anybody, and they tweaked it as they went a bit. But the producers, I think, recognized some shifting trends. Absolutely, the AIDS crisis being a key one. Feminism, which the Bond films tried to deal with in the 70s, and they kind of, I think I put in the book, they always sort of deal with it until the third act, when suddenly, Anya sees water and can't do anything anymore, and that sort of thing. But it's also Fleming, and it's also going back to what the books were like, which of course coalesces with what Dalton wanted to do, which was be more like Fleming's character. And if you go back and read the books, there's one or two women most of the time, the occasionally more, but generally speaking, there's a main woman, then maybe another woman. And so, it was funny because for a long time it was a criticism of Dalton's movies that he's basically not getting enough sex. And it's like Living Daylights, you get some in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you know, fair play.
Won't you join me?
Better make that two.
It also has the consequence in Living Daylights, particularly, of allowing the female character Kara actually to be a character because she's there for the whole movie. And I think I know we're talking about Dalton, but having a lead romantic partner throughout the whole movie allows him to develop what he does as she develops what she does, and there's just more depth to that romance.
It's really believable.
Which was it is, and it created a different dynamic, which some people didn't like. But although if you go back and look at the box office, it did better than A View to a Kill.
Yeah,
It was an uptick. And you know, the poster, which we keep mentioning, but that poster's brilliant. It is just
compared to the License to Kill one.
Well,
we'll get on to that.
We will. But Dalton, it fascinates me because I think he finished Brenda Starr and had 2 days or something stupid before Living Daylights, and he threw himself into it, and literally threw himself into it by getting on top of a Land Rover and going down Gibraltar, and brought this incredible intensity. And I'm not criticizing Rog in A View to a Kill, but you can see the joins when it's the stuntman. You can definitely see the cuts when he's not doing it. He perhaps isn't attacking the role with intensity, which you go back and look at, you know, Live and Let Die and A Man with a Golden Gun. He's full throated in that. Whereas Dalton, from that very first scene, is just physical and intense, and it's an incredibly sort of interesting and capturing moment.
Yeah, that is something that set him out immediately. I mean, think about that, 2 days. Now it's like
give or
5
take,
years if you can be bothered between. Anyway, less of that. Well, let's hope that we have more consistent Bond films coming out every few years in the future. The Gibraltar opening sequence, I mean, we can just talk about that. I mean, that is, we've already said, it's if not the best pre-title sequences. It's also arguably the best introduction to a new Bond actor, I think. You know, he's not in it for quite a bit. John Glenn deliberately holds off and does that trick of, we know Bond, or do we? He's one of the guys parachuting out, and 2 of them have already got shot. Not in reality, of course, because they're on this drill. It's such a good idea, isn't it? Just having a saboteur amongst an actual drill that is actually killing them. That moment, of course, when Tim turns to the camera, it's Kathleen. Come on, this is James Bond.
Exactly. So one of the things that strikes me about Tim is you've said he's like probably the best actor, but I've done some homework. I've rewatched both of them, and what really strikes me is how Tim uses his eyes and his facial expressions in acting much more than any of the other Bond. The others just like deadpan in action sequences, and you know, it's sometimes, right? And you know, you just like Tim's eyes are so expressive in many of these sequences that you know you really feel that he is Bond and he's portraying that character. On top of that, how cool is it to actually start with like something in the beginning of a movie that it's like a boys trying to figure out how to beat the enemy. It's it could be child's play, right? The one team against the other. It's perfect for getting younger people enjoying Bond. And on top of that, making it like really gritty, getting people killed. It's I love this so much. It immediately makes it serious, and in the end, him ending up on the boat, perfect.
Yeah.
I honestly, sometimes you hear that Tim didn't have the charm with the ladies. I don't see it. I actually think Tim has a really good, you know, way of approaching the role in a believable manner and in a believable way of you know talking to his women. And to be fair, Cara is one of my top 5 Bond women. She grows so much throughout this movie from a very introverted uh, girl at the beginning who hardly ever speaks to anyone, and then in the end she really knows what she wants. Obviously it's Bond, but it's really, it's such a growth in that movie, and I really love that they gave her the opportunity to do that in the movie. Now I actually, well, I you won't hear me say a bad word about the Living Daylights, other than maybe just sometimes Tim's hair looks terrible.
In this one.
Well, it's less so in the Living Daylights, but Tim really had not the best hairstyles of the Bonds.
Well, I think sometimes it looks brilliant, and then we're looking at the casino scene in License to Kill. Obviously, I think that's the main culprit, but we will get there. But it is interesting. I think because since then he's done, Hot Fuzz, and new audiences have seen him. He has done comedy, and I think people are just a little bit lazy, aren't they? Just thinking, oh, he doesn't do that. And Steve, come on, Hawks as well. So the guy he can do all styles.
Yeah, I mean, after seeing License to Kill at cinema, which I was so blown away by on every level, but particularly by this leading man, Timothy Dalton, I just wanted to see anything he was in. And I remember Hawks being on TV at around that time. Never heard of it before, and watched it, and I was one of the most powerful films I've seen. I hadn't seen a lot of movies, to be fair, at that time, because all I watched was James Bond and Star Wars, and maybe Indiana Jones. This was a proper drama or comedy drama, but and it, about two guys battling cancer, and yeah, it really, his performance in that is so powerful. But as Bond, I mean, in the Daylights, it's brilliant. I will just say it's funny. My only issue I've ever had with Daylights is not. I know some people don't like the way it kind of doesn't really have a definite ending, because it sort of has the big sequence and then it has a bit more. That doesn't bother me. I and Kathleen, you're going to hate what I'm about to say. I never bought it into the relationship with Cara for years, and that was always my sticking point. Whereas I felt much more convinced in License to Kill by him and Pam, but I have in recent years realized I was not reading it correctly, and that was the problem. I thought it just seemed too, Bond was falling for her too fast. I didn't believe it. But I've realized, of course, he's not. He's playing her
Absolutely.
for the early stages of the film, and I hadn't really realized that.
Don't think. Just let it happen.
He's playing her, trying to get information from her. He's not in love with her at all to start with. That she falls for him very quickly. Who wouldn't? But he moves gradually from playing her to you realize he is falling for her, probably around about the time she drugs him, actually. But,
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I actually I would pinpoint that towards like the scene where they're at Cameron Shaw's like place.
High star.
What does that mean?
It means beautiful in Afghan.
I
Oh,
think
yeah.
that's where he really kind of starts feeling, a little bit amorous towards her.
yeah. And since I realized that, since I've got out of my thickness and understood what's actually going, you can tell I'm no good with women, can't you? My goodness. Now, finally, after 30 years of watching it, I've worked out what's going on there. My one quibble is gone, and I just love the whole film.
It's just to build on that. It's runs through the whole movie, this idea of acting and doubling,
Yeah.
and who is and who isn't, and Steve's right. They're who's seducing who's acting, who's just as Koskov is defecting, no, he's not defecting. Just as the guy's a milkman, he's not a milkman, but that thematic richness compared to, let's say, Octopussy. I'm not sure Octopussy has great thematic richness. It's great fun.
Well, disguises.
Yeah, it has disguise. It has some great disguises, but it sort of, it's unusual to see a Bond film reach for that at this point. Now we kind of maybe had enough of it at the other end of it, but then these were sort of very slick, very straightforward adventure films, and then this movie where they're sort of reaching for political complexity, emotional complexity, doing the sort of almost Hitchcockian doubling thing. So it's an interesting movie in loads of different ways, and then Dalton's at the center of that.
Probably will get mentioned lots more, but John Glenn, because I do think you talked about I've seen Beautiful. I love those films, but he was still trying to service that Roger Moore audience and doing it perfectly. And he was probably making the films a little bit edgier than they had been in the
Yeah,
70s,
definitely.
but he's still servicing that Roger Moore market. And I think it shows what incredibly skillful director he was. And we all know how modest Glenn is. He'd never say it, but that he was able to take such a big shift from those films that he was doing with Roger Moore. They had this new star. They wanted to go in a different direction. And he does it so effortlessly. He looks like he's been making that sort of film forever.
Yeah.
I think his skill is so underrated, and you see it a lot in the daylights. In daylights, I think, in scenes like with the fabulous balloon scene, the bursting balloon. John Glenn does such a great job of allowing Dalton to act, allowing him to do his thing, and capturing every moment of it.
Oh, absolutely loving hearing this, Steve. Totally with you on that. And he, as we've interviewed him, and he said many times, he trusts in the actors, doesn't he? And if he trusted in Timothy, didn't he? That's clearly what happened. And a bit like with, Tracy and Bond in Honor Majesties, some people say, oh, they needed to get in Dinah Rigg, who's a really good actor, because George was a novice. With this, it's sort of the other way around. I know Marianne had done more than certainly George had done, but it's almost like that raises her game, doesn't it? I think the two of them are so believable.
I mentioned this on the Living Daylights review we did, but I remember when we were preparing for that, I watched the behind the scenes footage of it, and there was an interview that Dalton did before Daylights, and what he did, he referenced Elizabeth Taylor. He was in a film with Elizabeth Taylor, and Elizabeth Taylor gave him some advice that always be generous, always let the other actor shine. And I have this thing with Dalton is that everybody who has a scene with Timothy Dalton as James Bond excels, and I think it's no coincidence. And if you look throughout the whole of those two films, so many people have chemistry. Like Living Daylights, so you've got Cara and Dalton. You've got three allies that he has unbelievable chemistry with in Pushkin, Cameron Shah, and Saunders, and yet all three of those chemistries are different, and it's quite phenomenal, really. He doesn't see Whittaker until the final scene, and yet that's by far and away Whittaker's best scene. And this is just this film. You could do the whole same thing for License to Kill in terms of Palm, Franz Sanchez, Felix. I mean, he's got about 10 minutes screen time with Felix, and you've never felt that James Bond and Felix have been closer, And this is Dalton's skill as an actor, but it's how he creates a platform for other actors to thrive. And it's no coincidence that you've got so many side characters in these two films that the Bond fandom absolutely adore. And that's massive credit to Dalton and massive credit to John Glenn, because John Glenn trusts actors. He just lets actors do that. And I think these are the reasons why these two films have grown in love over time, because the acting is timeless on these films.
Just want to shout out to Robert Brown as M, who he's great in the last two Roger Moore's, but he taking over from Bernard Lee. In Dalton's movies, Robert Brown is M, and their relationship is completely different. It's much testier. There's a real fizzle and crackle to it, and Brown is given more to do to react to what Dalton's doing, and that relationship really is elevated, I think. And Brown, it's not criticizing him in the other movies, he just has more to do. It's more interesting, and he has more to react to, like John says.
It was instinct.
I'll recall 008 from Hong Kong. He can do it. He doesn't know Pushkin. He follows orders, not instincts.
We're not a country club, 007.
And you were there. We'll get on to that, Glenn.
Oh, is that? I know, wrong film.
Yeah.
We add on to that, Kerry. Q is like a completely different Q in these two films. It's like a role reversal where all of a sudden you've not got this exasperated quartermaster with a playboy James Bond. You've got a serious James Bond, and Q's like an eccentric uncle who's wanting to share these gadgets all over the place. And even he's getting a bigger platform. And it's no criticism of what's previously gone because I have flipping adore Roger Moore, but it's more just the best way of respecting the past is bringing in the new in some ways.
What's my code?
Oh, most appropriate. A wolf whistle.
You mean,
I guess that falls in with what Carrie was saying about Dalton being an actor, not wanting to be a movie star. You know, if you want to be a movie star, you want the light on you. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because I think take Roger and Pierce, who are perhaps similar in that way. Their movie stardom, I think, helped propel the films to new audiences, and their love for the franchise was superb. They could do great publicity for the film. That all comes with being a movie star. And I don't think Timothy Dalton is particularly comfortable with that. But being an actor, yes, he wants people around him to shine. I can't agree more with you, John, with what you say there.
Just, I think, Steve, you said it about, I can't believe the shift from, and it's not a ridiculously huge shift where you think this is just completely different franchise or series of films, but in the space of 2 years, less than, they go from Roger Moore's long-standing Bond with pretty much the same crew. The only other major cast change is Moneypenny, and they're able to produce this, and not with the whole, the big thing is, as I'm sure they would do now, like, right, this is a new James Bond as you've never seen him before. We need a new director, we need new writers, or we need, no, it's like almost the same, but they're able to do this, and not particularly in in a sort of grand way where it's all about that. But I think they do such an incredible job of just bringing the tone just a little bit more in line with Dalton's Bond. I know that eventually, License to Kill sort of pushed that further, but I've never had a problem with any of the little jokes that are said. I don't have a problem with them. And I just think the way that they've been able to do this shift so effortlessly and not so ridiculously over the top, if you know what I mean, going the other way, is such a credit to John Glenn and to all the crew. And as John says, John Glenn giving the actors the room to do what they want to do with their part and their dialogue and everything, rather than a dictator of a director who's saying you got to do it this way, you got to do it that way, and still come up with one of the best films, completely changing the portrayal of women, having Bond have one of the most romantic films that he's ever. I know, obviously, but I think that makes it more romantic that to begin with he's sort of playing Cara, but then he's gradually sort of falling for her, which is just, we don't see that very often in Bond films. And when we do, that's the whole point of not the whole point of the film, but, On Her Majesty's or Casino Royale, those are the main, even World Is Not Enough, possibly, you could argue. But this is just another element to this brilliant film. I think I just can't credit the people involved with this film enough.
Same writers as well. Just
Yeah.
It's interesting. I do think if you watch the Glenn movies, he is pushing more towards that. Kicking the car with locking it in For Your Eyes Only.
Yeah.
But Roger's there pulling. And talked about this in interviews. He didn't see Bond movies that way. So I think Dalton gives Glenn the ability to really do it, and I think, and Glenn said that License to Kill is he thinks it's his best movie, and I think because with Dalton he can absolutely go for it with the confidence. He's got the actor to do that, and again, it's not a criticism of Roger. He's just doing something different, and he's doing it beautifully. But there's a synchronicity between what Glenn wants to do at this point and what Dalton wants to do.
But I don't think they could have done the romance, the Cara storyline with Roger.
Not at that age, no.
Well, no.
In a sense, this is like the sort of last of an era Bond, in the sense that it's, obviously the Berlin Wall came down in '89, probably after License to Kill came out, because I'm thinking like probably came out somewhere in summer. But given that License to Kill is so much focused on like US and that part of the world, so it to people like me, I guess I'm the youngest on this call. It feels like a really like the end of the Cold War age, and I really like the spy actually being spies in the spies being spies in the Living Daylights. And given that you have so many, you often, as you said, don't know who's playing who. It's so exciting, and it doesn't even matter in the end what the story is to a certain extent. I think it took me years to understand what is actually happening, but the fact that you never know is are they really like on the same side or not is so exciting. And I think that's really, one of the fun parts of this Bond film.
Each character has a character arc, doesn't it? They
Exactly,
each have a
yeah.
different relationship with Bond, like John said. And by the end of it, we really invest in that. And Saunders is obviously, I mean, until, I don't know, maybe until we started talking about it, just don't hear enough mention of this guy. We think he's possibly the best ally of the lot. He's really up there. Not just, I think people just think Kerim Bay is obviously usually the one, or Draco, because they're so charismatic. That's more, he's my favourite ally. But in terms of best character and the character growth, it's so well done. I mean, and the way, the sort of begrudging respect, this is where it all comes in. So you've got the brilliant performance of Tim for the murder of Saunders, brilliant performance of Tim, John Glenn just letting the actors do the talking, using those shots, those close-in shots of Tim's face, rather than him saying, "Oh, I can't believe this. I really like this guy." No, there's no words needed. Let's just film the reaction. And that bursting the balloon is so good. And then you've got John Barry's music, who, I mean, the two scores of these two films are very different, but both, in my opinion, perfect for their respective films. That, I think, is like, I mean, there's so many scenes in these films that I could say are amongst the best in the franchise, but if you had like a show reel, if you were Timothy Dalton and you were saying, "What do you do?" "I'm an actor." Like, "Oh, can I see some of your stuff?" "Yeah." So show them that, because that is just, it is on another level. It's no offense to Roger. It's just, this is doing something different with the character. And when we talk about his legacy later, I think that's a better way of doing it than a certain actor that came later. Anyway. We have mentioned, going into the action a lot, Carey. The
Yeah,
action
I
scenes in
mean,
this film are brilliant, even though we're saying it's a drama with all these characters.
yeah, you do. I mean, it's essential, and to a certain extent, Bond films are always, or at least used to be, kind of structured around, you know, we need an action beat every so often, and what are our big stunt things. But it's Dalton's willingness to get in. He was, I think, 40 when Living Daylights filmed. He did as much as he could, as much as they would let him. In fact, he twisted their arm a bit to get on top of that Land Rover, because you don't put your star of your movie in a really dangerous position, because then you've got no movie if it goes horribly wrong. But he's physical all the way through. The fights are physical, and it's interesting because he doesn't look like a big guy, Dalton. I think he's 6'2", though.
Yeah, yeah.
Was back in the day. So I think, as tall as a Bond has ever been. But he has a very sort of stillness to him, which suggests strength. But when he moves, he moves very capably, and he's utterly convincing. But he always believed as an actor that as much as you could, the audience should see you in it, so you don't break the reality. And you do see it in some of the other movies. It's like, that's clearly there's that bit in A View to a Kill where the car gets the windscreen smashed off, and it's clearly a guy in a helmet and a wig. And and that's actually one of the reasons we love A View to a Kill, because you get moments like that. But when Dalton does it, it's like seamless. Even the stuff in the plane, when they're in the back of the Hercules, where Dalton and Necros are in the studio versus the was it BJ Worth and the guys out somewhere in America doing crazy dangerous stuff. It's beautifully edited, so it just looks like it's Dalton, and it's utterly convincing for that, and that helps you identify and buy into that. But also, and I think this is key, more so in License to Kill, but it's true in Living Daylights, he gets hurt. He's not perfect. And that is a really interesting thing about his performance too.
Because Necros he's up there with the hardest, isn't he, henchman? And all throughout the film, we're thinking, how on earth is Bond going to kill him? Because inevitably there's going to be some kind of fight at the end. And he's up against it, Bond, isn't he? Because he's from behind, and then he's instantly, great, this is it. What's he going to do? Glenn just takes back to being at the cinema as a kid and seeing those scenes where Bond is literally dangling on the edge of a plane.
Oh, it's phenomenal. And I mean, I actually also was living in Saudi Arabia at the same. I was like going backwards forwards from England to Saudi Arabia. And so, the scenes with the desert and stuff, I could kind of relate to because
Yeah,
I
yeah,
lived in the kingdom at that time in Saudi. So all that was amazing, and it looks so believable. The scenes in the airplane, everything. And yeah, obviously we know now it was like models and things like in the studio, but. No, as Kerry said, it was just so seamless. But of course, the best action scene in the entire film doesn't include Timothy, the kitchen fight. But
yeah. Oh,
I
goodness
know you
me.
talked about that before, but
Yeah,
that's just phenomenal. But that again shows, how amazing the whole cinematography, fight scenes, and direction by John Glenn. It's just a great movie with everything. But that kitchen scene is phenomenal.
yeah.
A
It's
little bit
probably
violent for a 10-year-old, but it was a phenomenal.
no. It's growing up as kids, we were obsessed with it. I'm still. It's probably the best non-Bond fight. Well, it is, isn't it? It doesn't involve.
I don't think I saw that for years. I think the version I had taped off ITV cut that whole fight
Probably
out.
did, yeah.
Nearly the whole fight. And so years later I watched it, it's like, where has this been? For years I knew they, you saw like the start of it and the end of it, and all the stuff with like his face on the cooker, the really good stuff. They excised.
I suppose the plot, it doesn't advance the plot, but it advances the character, doesn't it?
It advances
basically,
Necros,
yeah, it
and
does.
it just shows how powerful he is, and you just think, how is James Bond going to, is he going to meet his match at last? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, brilliant use of the song as well. I was
Yeah.
thinking, or is John Glenn the like he sort of has as a trademark that he uses background songs that people get obsessed by currently. But Necros' song is I love it blasting through his earphones all the time. And obviously we love Dirty Love
Yeah, yeah.
License to Kill.
Yeah.
And so those are it's the only Bond that I think has in all of his movies like a song that we can play anywhere and nobody other than other Bond geeks know
Yeah.
that this is a Bond song.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We might have news on that later, but we'll keep still. Yeah, Steve, the action for you, and there's other bits of action. I know there's the pre-title sequence, there's the plane fight at the end. There's also the cello chase in the snow. There's the rooftops of Tangier. I mean, there's even
Well,
more.
I insisted you brought that cello. Yeah,
Yeah.
as Gary said, I mean, I think it's the realism that is because Timothy was so keen to get involved and be there, and also the skill of the special effects guys, the stunt guys, and the direction of John Glenn. That everything seems so believable because you just get that bit more of Timothy. To be fair with Roger, he did more stunts in his earlier films. So if you watch the earlier Roger films, I do think it's much
That
harder
is fair.
to joins. But after he had, I think it was on the Spy Love Me, he got a fairly serious injury, didn't he? And after that, he didn't want to do stunts. And you do have, it does suffer, and especially badly in A View to a Kill. I don't know, the wigs seem to be not quite right. Something's just not quite there, is it?
Right, we love that, Steve. We don't need to dwell.
But my point being, when you get someone like Dalton, who is, I suppose, a bit like, now you'd say Tom Cruise, who likes to do all his stunts, but Dalton does so many of them, and I've heard stories about how the producers would turn up and be horrified finding out what Timothy had convinced John to let him do. But that and it's partly Tim's enthusiasm for doing it, and also the editing and the brilliant work of John and the special effects guys, that it just fits together, and it means with those action sequences you're never taken out of them. I mean, the finale out the back of that plane, even though I have now seen how they did parts of it, it's so well done that I'm not seeing that when I'm watching it. I'm just totally engrossed in the action. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. How anybody like John, like you were saying, your dad saying, "Oh, he's not a good Bond." How you can watch these films and think he's not a good Bond. I think people didn't pay attention. I think people loved Roger Moore, and then they just didn't give the new guy a chance. Some people.
I think it's just a very lazy kind of view in terms of
Graham.
he did two, so he mustn't have been very good. It's that kind of thing, isn't it? But I mean, the thing with Living Daylights is that it's an immaculate film. Everything that happens is completely intentional throughout it.
We talk about ITV a lot showing these films. And I think a lot of Bond films, Roger Moore ones, you can dip in at any point and be entertained. But John, as you say, this is an immaculate film, but part of that is it's an intelligent film. And you can't just drop in for 5 minutes unless you've caught one of the action scenes. You can't just drop in for 5 minutes and just go along with it. You need to watch this film, which is, I think, to its credit, but it also perhaps means with a wider audience, it doesn't connect a little bit with some that get replayed on TV a lot. And you just join halfway through and you're fine because it's all pretty obvious.
I wonder if this is the last or the last Sunday afternoon Bond film. Maybe it's more of a Friday night, Saturday night Bond film, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Tomorrow Never Dies, we say, maybe, but...
Yeah, but I still think Tomorrow Never Dies is like...
pizza and...
pizza,
and beer.
Yeah.
I think it's the last classic, Jim.
Yeah. Kathleen was saying, yeah.
And it does feel kind of 60s, you know.
Yeah.
Because of the Cold War as well, you know, the elements.
Yeah.
I just had this amazing anecdote. I just suddenly remembered something from when I was first time I saw it, age 10. And it's because just a couple of weeks before it came out, I was so excited. And there was this, you probably have heard of it. There was this book released of all the different James Bond movies and stuff. And I remember seeing a picture, and you know the scene, because Steve just mentioned Tangier, the scene where Timothy Dalton, James Bond, is on a carpet and he escapes. And there was this picture in the book, and I was so excited about this one scene. And I remember now watching it in Sevenoaks, but feeling so disappointed. I was like, where's that scene? It's gone. It's not there. I was like, I'm not making this. I just suddenly remember now. I was so disappointed.
You have seen it in the deleted scenes, have you now, Glenn?
And it's rubbish.
Yeah, they don't need it.
Yeah. It would have, but you know, as a kid, I was just like really super disappointed.
Brilliant.
I mean, and the great thing is as well is that I'm going to go out on a limb and say possibly the greatest James Bond scene ever in Tangier. Probably in terms of the Pushkin scene. The Pushkin scene is perfect.
Smiert spionem.
Smiert spionem.
2 of our agents are dead.
I think it's Dalton's idea of that he shows don't tell. He's got 101 emotions going on at that one moment. He's got orders to kill Pushkin, and yet he is completely in conflict because he ultimately knows that he's not a villain. And I think that scene to me sums up Dalton. So if I was to say Dalton, I call Dalton the Bond of conviction. And what I mean by that is that in both of his films, he goes rogue to an extent. He does not do what he is told, but he's right not to.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, is that he lives by his instincts and to go against his orders because he's right. Not because he's belligerent, not because he's having a monk, but because
you're not referring to anyone else.
Completely generic. But but that's the point. Is that he's the best spy because he knows exactly what's right, and he has this reluctance in a lot of ways. He's a reluctant hero, you know. He go ahead, thank him for it if he fires me. You know, there's a world weariness to him, but it's justified because he's right. He sees the world as it's supposed to be seen, and he's having to take orders that are a conflict to how he sees the world, and ultimately he's right. And I think that is unbelievable, especially in contrast to, say, 2 years before, we've got Roger, who's just right all the time, loves his job, loves his queen and country, perfect in every way. You go to this, I just don't think audiences were ready for it. I think that's the issue. I think that, you know, and this is all retrospective because, as you said at the start, Tom, it was an injection. it was a shot in the arm when it came out. But that retrospective view of the old Dalton's rubbish, like my dad said, and all that, just because people were not ready for what this was. This is what Daniel Craig could only dream to do.
But you kids are going to love it. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting if you go back and read reviews from the time that there's for Living Daylights, they're pretty positive. I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, thank God we got somebody a bit more younger and vigorous than Rog." Some people got hung up on the plot, like we've discussed already, that it is twisty turny, and I don't think that's a problem. I just think that's a surprise because it's a Bond movie and they're supposed to be bad guy lives in volcano, good guy shoots bad guy, and you know, really simplify things down. And it is a deliberately twisty turny plot that wrong foots you at several times, which is why I think it has repeated watch value in a different way. And what Steve said was that you kind of have to watch the whole damn movie.
Yeah,
that's really, really important. It also benefited. It's worth thinking that it was the 25th anniversary, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting movie when you're talking about him as a seasoned pro. That absolutely. We're 25 years in, and of course we had continuity. Okay, it's a kind of loose, weird continuity because you can't quite imagine Dalton being in space, but maybe. But it's positioned that he's an old character, and Dalton, was approached or at least sounded out for Bond back in the 60s around Her Majesty's Secret Service, and he said, "I'm too bloody young. There's just no way I'm doing this. Bond's about 40, so he is a seasoned pro and he's world weary." But again, that's Dalton. I think going back to the books and looking at the contradictions of Fleming's character. Fleming's character is a guy who is very conscious that he kills for the government, but he also can be quite soft and romantic. He also enjoys himself and his food and his drink as well. And he plays into those contradictions quite a lot. So sometimes he's angry because, he's just been told to go and shoot this young woman and he's halfway through and he's going to shoot her. He's quite happy with shooting this stranger, but it's that realization that I'm not shooting professional. He's got standards, but also that he knows it's not right. So his morality, which is this conviction stuff that John's talking about, which is really interesting, is always there and it's always present. Whereas death, sometimes in some of the other movies, and who Bond kills is flippant, and sometimes quite funny. And I always think of that one with Fiona Volpe and Thunderball, and it is witty and fun. And can she sit this one out? She's just dead. Well, yeah, okay. And these are great moments. But that's not what Dalton's trying to do. He thinks clearly that these things are serious.
The sniper was a woman, that scene. I mean, that's just classic Bond, isn't it?
Shoot her. What are you waiting for? You missed deliberately.
It's very John Glenn, in a lot of the other ones. You have a fairly fantastical, action-packed opening, and then he really hits you with something pretty dark. A bit like the clown being chased in Octopussy. And this is, again, in the Cold War. It's, even as kids, I didn't fully understand what was going on, but I just found it so thrilling. And you were caught up in that world, like Kathleen said, in the Cold War world. You had the opera, which was always very, that's quite glamorous within that world. Then you've got the whole, possibly, who's a baddie, who's a goodie? And it's just absolutely irresistible. And John Barry, again, comes into his own. But it's that believability that Dalton brings, isn't it, as a secret agent? The way he's just so dismissive of Saunders, and that he thinks he's right. And of course, like John said, he is proven to be right against the odds. No one ever compares it, Matthew, like this. Compares Bond on that respect with Mulder, in the X-Files. He's always the one like, no, I'm telling you, no one believes me. This is it. And Scully at the end should be like, he's right again. It was supernatural every time. Like, why don't you just listen to me?
Yeah, I don't think anyone else has ever made that comparison.
It's in Kerry's
probably
book.
Never will. Yeah.
Second edition. I'll do an anniversary edition. Put it in.
Now, you mentioned it was like the 25th anniversary of the Bond films, and I'm wondering, like, there's obvious a reference to Thunderball in the movie, where you have like the cooling case with the heart. It says "handle like eggs,"
Oh
exactly
yeah.
like the bombs in Thunderball. I'm wondering if this is like the first movie that they're like explicitly referencing back, because they have this, this so manyth birthday. I know when I was watching what was it, Die Another Day in cinema,
Yeah.
that was one of the things that I tried to figure out, how many references are there to previous Bond movies.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing it started at some point, and I'm not sure if
Well,
you
obviously, there's referencing
collections of
with
other
On Her
ones.
Majesty's Secret Service
Yeah, there are
at the beginning. That's
Yeah.
probably the very first one with George
Yeah, of
Lazenby.
course, yeah.
But that's the
Yeah.
clear connection between the two, Sean and George.
Yeah.
That's why they did that.
Yeah, but I feel like this one's a bit more hidden. Like
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
on
yeah.
Her
Oh,
Majesty's
yeah.
Secret Service is like really in your face,
Yeah.
like references to everything before, basically.
Even with the music as well. Yeah.
Exactly.
Something else you mentioned, Kerry, I think, you were talking about the facets of the Fleming character, and one of them you mentioned was the sort of that love of luxury, that love of the finer things in life. And I was thinking maybe Tim doesn't have as much of that because he doesn't seem as much of a show off. But then the hamper that he sends to M, and that is like, that's perfect.
Bollinger RD, the best.
The brand on the list was questionable, sir, so I took the liberty of choosing something else.
Superb, Mr. Bond, superb.
It's interesting. He is kind of less, so more understated or less overstated, whichever.
Yeah.
There's a really good book. I want to say it's called Dressing James Bond. It might not be. It's by a lady called Luella Chapman, which is all about the costumes in the Bond movies. And she goes into really great detail about how his suits are different. He's wearing off the peg suits that were not Savile Row suits. And they're very deliberate to make the quality, but they're not as showy.
Yeah.
So he is deliberately, there's a choice to make him a bit less obviously James Bond walking in and ordering a martini. That's all still bubbling along. But yeah, he still likes his martinis. He still knows what the best champagne is. I was going to say he's less ostentatious. I don't know. He's driving around Bratislava in an Aston Martin, which is pretty ostentatious. But
and he knows a great restaurant in Karachi.
I know a great restaurant in Karachi. They can just make dinner.
But it's sort of a slightly less glamorous movie. There are moments. You still get women. There's a harem basically at one point where he's leaving, and you get all the beautiful women look at Bond, which is a bit like those swimming pool scenes you get in things like Fiore's Only. But there is something a bit more, I guess, subtle and understated about all of that. It's there, but again, if you go back to the novel, he likes that life for luxury, but he's not very ostentatious character, the guy in the novels, in the way that the movie sort of played up a lot of those things, which ties in particularly in the 60s to the change in the economy and the baby boomers coming into their teenagerdom and consumer society really taking off. So yeah, Bond does eventually wear a Rolex in the books, but it takes, I think, On Her Majesty's Secret Service might be the first Rolex, because he didn't really talk about that. But that, you watch is like a massive mainstay of the movies. But Fleming was less bothered. In fact, he was most interested in Bond using his watch as something to punch you with than he really was about anything else. So yeah, it dials down. But compared to what I had for dinner he's eating well.
Oh, that sounds tasty, though, doesn't it? That's more like
it was good.
Maybe since Thunderball, you could argue tie into that. It's possibly the classiest Bond film.
There is a really classy edge to this film. Yeah, and I think the locations play into that, and they are beautiful, and also without not broken record, the idea of sort of romancing Kara. There's a sort of classy. I know he's initially it's like he's doing it for the purpose of the mission.
When I first saw Living Daylights, and I saw Living Daylights before I saw License to Kill, Living Daylights was one of those seismic moments for me growing up, for sure, because there he was, the James Bond I'd read about, the 6 foot, lean, cruel to look at, desperately, icily handsome, and a man of definite action, purpose, and drive, with charm and sophistication to spare. And that was exactly the man that I saw when I saw Timothy Dalton. So as soon as I saw him jump out of the plane and when he lands on Gibraltar and then he takes off the, we see the big reveal of the new Bond when he turns to look at the camera. I'm so all in at this point. Like, it's just everything that I wanted out of James Bond is happening at this point. And obviously up to this point, I've enjoyed everything as well that's happened. I've enjoyed everything from Connery, everything from Lazenby, although, obviously only one, everything from Moore. And now you're getting this. I mean, it was so desperately exciting, but so grown up, and again, so ahead of its time. Living Daylights was doing stuff that movies started doing in the 2000s, by trying to make, action fare grow up, rightly or wrongly. But how lovely and wonderful is it that we have this take existing in the world of Bond as we know it? It's just, we're so lucky to have this. But that movie was just brilliant, and I think it's an expansion on the Living Daylights short story. What a brilliant movie and showcase for its actor it is. It also shows what I think was a uniquely Fleming trait, which was Bond's propensity for romance. And it was something that Dalton had in spades. He had that quiet introspection when it came to his romantic dalliances, when he was on one hand nodding to the sort of the more throwaway relationships of the Roger Moore era perhaps, but by the same token he was capable of love and capable of caring and capable of really feeling for somebody and what they were going through.
Do you like it?
For princess or wife of commissar?
Let's buy it.
And again, isn't this, eerily similar to things we were told about latter incarnations of Bond? Which, for me, were done far better many years prior. So, yeah, it's... I think if you want to see Bond as a grown-up, you watch these movies. You definitely watch the Dalton movies for me.
He's such a physical Bond, which is what I love about him. Starting Living Daylights, boom, straight out the trap. He is running down that hill. He is jumping on a moving car, fighting. And then moves brilliantly into intrigue and espionage and kind of all the intricate plot that's in place for the Living Daylights. That you really do see his journey of discovery as he's trying to piece this sort of puzzle together in terms of what Yorgi and Whittaker are up to, and picking up these allies and along the way. I think it's such a brilliant film, and he is the backbone to it. I think he really sort of does, let's say, grounds it. He makes it real. Another great scene is at the Prater with the wheel. Saunders' death. You've got this kind of love scene beforehand. Goes and meets him, so you've got this bonding of these two characters. Saunders gets killed, and then you see that intense, that anger, that kind of that you see that physical act of him physically just becoming tense, and the anger that is palpable on the screen, and John Glenn absolutely brilliantly captures that with that close up. When you see Dalton's face and he turns away, and you just see that, I got the message. Absolutely love that film. Absolutely love it.
Timothy Dalton in The Living Daylights. One of the strengths of that film is it is his debut. It is his introduction to the world and to fans as James Bond. And one of the strengths is that the story isn't about him. It is a brilliant film, a great mission, with brilliantly written storylines, themes, and it happens to be one of the James Bond films, and it is not at all about him. Of course, he's the lead character, but it's not personal. Timothy Dalton in this film just gets to portray his version of James Bond that still fits in with the canon of what we've seen before, but it is different. He brings something that is perhaps a little less warm, and along the way, he does form a relationship with Cara that is lovable, and it's not because he's handsome, it's not because he's good looking. it's because of the way his character interacts with her. It's deeper than that, and it's played by Timothy very modestly. It's all very modest, and obviously that comes across in his personal life as well.
It's a beautiful film, and it looks beautiful, I think. But it's so interesting, Kerry saying about the choices of Bond's suit, those subtle changes. They might not be so striking the first time you watch it, but that makes sense, when you think about it. But that's not to say that it makes Bond not Bond. I think it looks beautiful, it sounds beautiful. It is just it's a beautiful, brilliant film.
Add a Stradivarius to that, and you have total class.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, it's superb.
You didn't think I'd miss this performance, did you?